The blizzard hit without warning. 1 hour the sky was gray and still, the kind of still that feels like the world holding its breath. The next hour there was nothing. No road. No fence line. No horizon. Just white, moving fast and sideways, so thick I could barely see my own hand in front of my face. I had been on this land my whole life. I knew every hill, every rock, every dip in the road from the main trail to my ranch house. And even I had turned back inside. That's when I heard it. Not the wind. I knew the wind. This was something else underneath it. A sound that didn't belong to a blizzard. A horse. Panicked. Clothes. I grabbed my coat and went back out. I found them 40 yards from my front gate. A wagon buried to its axles in a drift, one horse wild-eyed and pulling against everything, the other standing with its head down like it had already given up. And sitting on the wagon seat, completely still, snow piling on her shoulders and her hat brim, was a woman. She wasn't moving. I reached her in a run and grabbed the side of the wagon. I shouted over the wind. "Can you hear me?" She turned her head slowly. Her face was pale, her lips nearly blue, her eyes unfocused in the way that told me she had been out here longer than she should have been. "I'm fine," she said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. She was not fine. I got her down from the seat. She tried to stand on her own and her legs went sideways and I caught her before she hit the snow. She didn't argue after that. I got her arm over my shoulder and we moved, slow and leaning into the wind, toward the house. She made it through the door under her own power. That was the first thing I noticed about her, even then, even half frozen and barely standing. She walked through that door herself. She wasn't going to be carried if she could help it. My name is Ethan Cross. I'm 28 years old, and I've lived alone on this ranch in the Wyoming high country for 6 years, since my father passed and left it to me. I'm not a man who gets visitors. The road to my ranch is steep and rough in summer and nearly impassable in winter. Most people in the nearest town, Grover's Pass, know better than to come this way when the clouds start building. This woman had not known better. Or she had known and come anyway. Her name was Clara Whitfield. 38 years old. Widow. From Philadelphia originally, though she'd spent the last decade in Denver with her husband, a man named Robert Whitfield who had died 4 months earlier of a fever that came on fast and didn't leave. I didn't learn all of this at once. I learned it the way you learn things about someone when you're both trapped inside by a blizzard and there's nothing to do but talk or sit in silence, and neither of you is quite comfortable enough with the other yet for silence to feel easy. First things first. I got her in front of the fire. Got her coat off and her boots off and wrapped her in the heaviest blanket I owned. Her hands were cold enough that I held them for a moment without thinking, just rubbing warmth back into them, and she let me, which told me how cold she actually was, because I already understood, in that first hour, that Clara Whitfield was not a woman who let people do things for her without a reason. "She's coming back," I said about the feeling in her hands, when she winced. "Good," she said. "I need them." "What for?" I asked. She looked at me. "Signing things," she said. "That's why I'm here." "To sign things?" I set her hands down carefully and went to put the kettle on. She had come to Wyoming to sell a ranch. That much came out while she was warming up and I was making coffee, pieces of it at first, then more. Her husband Robert had owned land out here, a working cattle ranch about 12 miles north, bought on speculation years ago and leased out to a neighboring operation ever since. Robert had never actually seen it. It had been an investment to him, numbers on paper, something his lawyer managed from a distance. Now Robert was dead, and the investment needed to be settled, and Clara had come herself because the lawyer she'd sent twice had come back both times with paperwork that didn't feel right to her. "You didn't trust the lawyer?" I asked. "I didn't trust the offer," she said. "There's a difference." I handed her the coffee. She took it in both hands and held it like it was the most important thing in the room. What was the offer? I asked. Less than it's worth, she said simply. Considerably less. I sat down across from her. How do you know what it's worth if you've never seen it? She looked at me over the coffee cup. Because I did the work to find out, she said. Before I came. Land values, water access, cattle prices, comparable sales in the county. She paused. Robert trusted people to handle things for him. I don't. I looked at her for a moment. Then I said, the ranch you're talking about. North of here, 12 miles, creek running through the east pasture. She straightened slightly. You know it? I know who made you the offer, I said. She went very still. Who? Man named Gerald Marsh, I said. He owns the operation that's been leasing your land. He's been trying to buy that creek access for 3 years. The creek feeds 2 of his pastures in dry season. Without it, he's got a problem. With it, he doubles the value of his own spread. Clara stared at me. I set my coffee down. The offer he made you. Was it around 4,000? 4,200, she said quietly. I nodded. That land is worth closer to 9, I said. Maybe more if the water rights are filed correctly. She was silent for a long moment. The fire crackled. Outside, the blizzard pushed against the windows and the walls and the whole house groaned under the weight of the wind. Then she said, How do you know this? Because Marsh made me the same offer 2 years ago, I said. For my east pasture. Different creek, same idea. I said no. She looked at me with an expression I couldn't entirely read. Part calculation, part something else. She was reassessing something. I could see it happening, the way you can see someone reorganizing their understanding of a situation in real time. Who are you? She asked. Ethan Cross, I said. My ranch borders yours to the south. She looked at the fire. So you're my neighbor, she said. Have been for 6 years, I said. Never met your husband. No, she said. You wouldn't have. He never came. There was something in how she said it that had weight to it. Not bitterness exactly. Something more settled than that. Like a fact she had long since finished being angry about and was now just carrying. I didn't ask about it then. It wasn't the time. Before this story goes any further, if you're already feeling something, if you're already wondering what Clara is really carrying behind those careful eyes, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and leave us a like. It costs you nothing and it means everything to this channel. Now let's get back to that ranch house, because the blizzard isn't letting up, and these 2 people aren't going anywhere tonight. The storm lasted 3 days. I had enough supplies. I always kept enough for a week at minimum, because Wyoming winters teach you that lesson fast or they teach it to you permanently. There was flour and salt pork and dried beans and coffee and enough firewood stacked on the porch to last 2 weeks if we were careful. Clara was not a complaining woman. That became clear by the end of the first day. She didn't complain about the cold or the inconvenience or the fact that she was stranded in a stranger's ranch house with no way to send word to anyone. She took stock of the situation, decided it was what it was, and adjusted. She also, by the end of the first day, had quietly reorganized my kitchen. I came in from checking on the horses to find my shelves rearranged, the flour moved to a different shelf where it was closer to the worktop, the salt and spices sorted into a logical order, the stack of mismatched plates straightened. I stood in the kitchen doorway and looked at it. You didn't have to do that, I said. I know, she said. She was already starting on the beans for supper, moving around the kitchen with the efficiency of someone who had decided it was hers for the duration and was going to manage it accordingly. But it was bothering me. I looked at the shelves. It had been bothering me too, for 6 years. I just hadn't done anything about it. I sat down at the table and watched her cook. She didn't seem to mind being watched. Or if she did, she didn't say so. Your husband, I said eventually. How long were you married? 11 years, she said, without turning around. Were you happy? She was quiet for a moment, stirring the pot. Robert was a good man, she said finally. Reliable. Honest. He provided well. She paused. We were suited to each other in the ways that matter for a stable life. That's not what I asked, I said. She turned around and looked at me then. Her expression was composed, but there was something underneath it that had shifted slightly. No, she said. It's not. She turned back to the pot. We were quiet for a while after that. The fire popped. The wind pushed at the walls. What about you? She asked. You're 28 and you live out here alone. What happened? I looked at the table. Her name was Ruth, I said. 3 years ago. She came out here with me from Cheyenne when I took over the ranch. Stayed 8 months. Said she hadn't understood what alone really meant until she lived it. She went back. Did you love her? Clara asked. I thought about that honestly. I thought I did, I said. But I think what I loved was the idea of not being alone. That's not the same thing. Clara set 2 bowls on the table and sat down across from me. No, she said. It isn't. We ate. The storm howled. The lamp threw its small circle of light across the table and the 2 of us sat in it, 2 people with different losses and the same understanding of what it meant to be in a life that looked right from the outside and felt quiet in ways it wasn't supposed to. The second day of the blizzard, Clara asked me about the ranch. My ranch, not hers. How I ran it, how many head of cattle, how I managed alone. She asked good questions, specific ones, the kind that told me she had done this before, sat across from someone who knew something and extracted the useful parts efficiently. I answered everything. She listened the way careful people listen, without interrupting, without filling silences, letting each answer sit for a moment before the next question. Then she said, "Would you be willing to walk me through the land when the storm breaks?" Her land. The 12 miles north. I looked at her. You're not selling, I said. It wasn't a question. Not to Marsh, she said. She looked at the window, white and opaque with driven snow. I came here to sell. That was the plan. Settle Robert's affairs, take the money, go back to Denver and decide what comes next. She was quiet for a moment. But now I want to see it, she said. Before I decide anything. I want to stand on it. She paused. Robert never stood on it. I don't want to make the same kind of decisions he made. I'll take you, I said. She looked at me. Why? Because Marsh doesn't deserve that water, I said. She almost smiled. That's a practical reason. It's the honest one, I said. She did smile then, small and brief, but real. The first real one I'd seen from her. The storm broke on the morning of the 3rd day. I knew it before I opened my eyes, the way you know things on land you've lived on long enough. The sound of the wind had changed in the night, dropped from a roar to a low hum, and by the time the sky started to lighten there was nothing. Just white, and still, and the whole world remade in clean silence. Clara was already up when I came downstairs. She was standing at the front window with her coffee, looking out at the snow. She had her traveling coat on, hat in hand, already ready. You don't wait around, I said. She looked at me. I've been waiting around for 3 days, she said. I put my coat on and we went out. The ranch was 12 miles north and the road was buried under 3 feet of snow, but I knew the way well enough and we took it slow. She rode well. Better than I expected, though I was starting to understand that Clara Whitfield did most things better than you expected. When we got to the boundary of her land, she stopped her horse and sat very still for a moment. She looked at the pasture land rolling out to the north, white and wide and edged by the dark line of trees along the creek. She looked at the mountains behind it. She looked at the sky above it, blue now and brilliant and enormous in the way Wyoming sky is enormous after a storm, like it got bigger when the clouds left. She was quiet for a long time. "Robert never saw this," she said. "No," I said. She turned and looked at me. "What would you do with it? If it were yours?" I thought about it honestly. "I'd run cattle on the north pasture," I said. "Hay on the south, the soil is right for it. The creek water is clean and the flow is reliable even in dry years. I'd build a proper barn, the one there now is too small for a working operation. And I'd file the water rights before anyone else could argue about them." She looked back at the land. "And Marsh would be finished," she said. "He'd manage," I said. "He'd just have to manage on what's actually his." She was quiet again for a while. Then she said, "I don't know anything about running cattle." "No," I said. "Or hay?" "No." "Or water rights?" "I know a lawyer in Grover's Pass who isn't working for the other side," I said. "And I know the land. I'm next door." She looked at me. "That's a considerable offer from someone who's known me 3 days." 2.5, I said. "You were barely conscious for the first half of the first one." She looked at me for a moment. Then she did something I hadn't seen yet. She laughed. A real one, short and surprised, like it had escaped before she could decide whether to let it out. It changed her whole face. I filed that away somewhere and didn't examine it too closely. She didn't sell. She told me that on the ride back, matter-of-factly, the way she said most things. She was going to stay through spring. See what the land was actually worth in operating terms, not just on paper. Figure out whether it made sense to run it or sell it properly, at a proper price, to someone who wasn't trying to steal it. "And you'll help me understand it," she said. It wasn't quite a question. "I'll help you understand it," I said. She nodded once and rode ahead. I watched her go for a moment. Straight-backed in the saddle, hat pulled low, moving through the snow like she'd been riding Wyoming land her whole life instead of 3 days. I had been alone on this ranch for 6 years. I had told myself I was suited to it. That the quiet was what I needed, the work, the land, the life that was mine and nobody else's to manage or question or leave. I rode after her and thought, quietly, that I might have been telling myself a story. We spent the spring the way she had said. Working. Learning. Her learning the land, me learning that Clara Whitfield asked better questions than anyone I had ever met and retained the answers completely and never needed to be told the same thing twice. She hired 2 ranch hands by April. Negotiated their wages herself, firmly but fairly, and they respected her for it immediately. She filed the water rights in March, with the lawyer I'd recommended, and Marsh's counterclaim went nowhere because she had done the paperwork correctly the first time. She came to supper at my ranch on Sundays. I came to hers on Thursdays. We told ourselves and each other that it was practical, 2 neighboring operations with shared interests, a sensible arrangement. One Sunday in May, she arrived with a look on her face that was different from her usual composed expression. Something quieter. More careful. "I have to go back to Denver," she said. "Next week. To settle the last of Robert's affairs. Sign the final papers." "How long?" I asked. 2 weeks. Maybe 3. She set her coat on the chair and sat down at my table. She looked at her hands for a moment. "I've been thinking," she said. "About the ranch?" I asked. She looked up at me. "No," she said. I waited. I was married for 11 years to a man I was suited to, she said. And I told myself that suitability was enough. That stability was the same as happiness. That wanting more than that was impractical. She was quiet for a moment. I don't think that anymore, she said. I looked at her across the table. This woman who had walked through my door half frozen and reorganized my kitchen and learned water rights in a Wyoming winter and laughed exactly once so far in a way that changed everything in whatever room she was in. Clara, I said. She looked at me steadily. I'm 28 years old, I said. And I know that. And you're 38. And I know that too. She waited. And I have been watching you run a ranch from nothing for 4 months, I said. And I have had supper with you every Sunday and learned more from your questions than from any 10 years of my own experience. And there is nobody in the state of Wyoming whose opinion I would rather have on anything that matters. She was very still. I'm not asking you to decide anything today, I said. I'm asking you to come back from Denver. She looked at me for a long moment. That careful, precise look that was reading something. Then she said, I was already planning to come back. I know, I said. I'm asking you to come back for a reason beyond the ranch. She looked at her hands again. Then she looked up. You're going to have to be patient with me, she said. I'm not good at this. At letting things be what they are without managing them into something safer. I've got time, I said. She left for Denver on a Tuesday. She was back in 12 days, not 3 weeks. She didn't explain why she'd come back early. She didn't need to. We married in September, at the end of the first good harvest, with the hay in and the cattle fat and the water rights settled and the whole of Grover's Pass crammed into the church on a Saturday afternoon because word had gotten around and small towns show up for things that matter. Clara walked in alone. Of course she did. She walked down the aisle in a dress the color of deep water, composed and straight-backed and entirely herself, and she looked at me from halfway down like a woman who had made a decision she was certain about and was done deliberating. I told her that night, at the kitchen table of the ranch house that had started as Robert's investment and was now something neither of them had planned for, that she was the most capable person I had ever watched walk into a room and figure out exactly what it needed. She told me that was an unusual thing to say to someone on their wedding night. I said it was still true. She looked at me across the table and said, You are a very strange man, Ethan Cross. I said I supposed I was. She smiled. The real one. The one that had escaped exactly once before and that I had filed away somewhere and not examined too closely. I wasn't being careful with it anymore. Outside, the September night was settling over the Wyoming high country, the stars coming out one by one above the mountain line, the first cool edge of autumn in the air. The horses were in. The cattle were settled. The water rights were filed. And for the first time in 6 years, the house didn't feel like something I was maintaining. It felt like something we were building. I thought about the night of the blizzard sometimes. About riding out into that white nothing and finding a woman sitting completely still on a wagon seat with snow piling on her shoulders. About how she had said I'm fine in a voice that was barely a whisper. About how she had walked through my door under her own power even when her legs went sideways. I thought about how much of who she was had been right there in that first minute, if I had known how to read it. I knew how to read it now. There's no villain in this story either. No dramatic standoff. No burning barn. Just a blizzard that hit without warning, a woman who walked through a stranger's door under her own power, and two people who had both spent a long time in lives that looked right from the outside and felt quiet in ways they weren't supposed to. Clara Whitfield came to Wyoming to sell a ranch she'd never seen. She stayed because the land was worth more than she'd been told. And she came back from Denver in 12 days instead of 3 weeks because some things are worth more than the land. Sometimes that's how it happens. The blizzard doesn't ask permission. The door is just there. And the only question is whether you're the kind of person who walks through it yourself. If this story gave you something today, if you stayed all the way to that September wedding and felt the stars and the autumn air and that real smile, then you're exactly who this channel was made for. Subscribe, leave us a like, and tell us in the comments, when did you know Clara wasn't going to sell? Was it when she reorganized the kitchen? When she laughed? Or that morning she stood on the land and went quiet? More stories are coming. More wide skies. More quiet courage. More love that arrives when you've stopped looking for it and a blizzard makes the decision for you. This is Frontier Hearts. Until next time.